Welcome to the 30 Days of Courage, everyone. I'm your host, Ashley Easter. I am the founder and executive director of Courage 365, and we have a great show planned for you tonight. So some of you I know are tuning in for the first time. You've decided to join us because you heard about the Survivor Spouse panel, and we want to welcome you if this is your first time here. And also to let you know that you are popping in at the end of the month, as we have done a whole 30 Days of Courage event through the month of October. So every Friday we have had different speakers, and you can get those replays in the group. Right now they are all pinned to the top of the group in the featured section. We've had so many amazing speakers. We've done self-care challenges, lots of great discussions and support groups. And just because the 30 Days of Courage is almost over, this is our last night, which is sad, but also I'm excited for what we're about to do. Just know that we're not going anywhere. Our organization is going to continue supporting you through the rest of the year, through next year, and hopefully for many years to come. We have so many other resources we're going to be dropping, and I'm just super excited to continue connecting with you. And at the end of this, I will be sure to share some of those resources and ways you can continue staying in touch. All right, so I know why you all are here. You're here for the Survivors Spouse panel. This is all about spouses who have their spouse has experienced some type of abuse or trauma. It is maybe in their childhood. It was maybe something they experienced in adulthood. It doesn't really matter so much, but they are spouses who are supporting another spouse. So this is going to be relevant if you're married, but also if you just have a partnership with somebody, some sort of a relationship. I think it's also going to be valuable if you're supporting somebody as a friend too. There's going to be some tidbits you can pull from that. And so without further ado, I'd like to invite our panelists onto the screen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 30 Days of Courage panel.
Hello.
Hi. It's so good to have you all. And kind of our first question is just going to be about a little bit with the introductions. So what I want to do is I just kind of want to go around and ask you to share your name, which we can see on the screen, who you're married to, and then how long you have been together with your spouse. So Will, we'll go ahead and start with you. People probably know some of these answers, but go ahead anyway.
Hey, my name is Will Easter, and I am married to the one and only Ashley Easter. And we've been married now. Next month will be 8 years.
Yes. And it's been great. And so that's why I wanted him on the panel. Linda, you're next.
Hi, I'm Linda Pittman. I am married to the wonderful David Pittman. We have been married 8 years, but we are high school sweethearts. So
Aww.
We've known each other for maybe 10 years, right? Just kidding. So I'm not going to age myself, but so yeah, that's who I am.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know we shared kind of an anniversary time. That's really cool. David has been so awesome. I know he's been a speaker for us in the past. And so thank you so much, Linda. Jeff, what about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Garcia, and I am married to the awesome Maureen Farrell Garcia. And we have known each other for almost 20 years. And next year we will be married for 16 years.
Awesome. And Maureen is actually one of our board members. She created some of our resources that we'll share later. She's an awesome person, and really glad to have you here, Jeff. And Matt, your turn.
Hi, I'm Matt Forsythe. I'm married to Lyria Forsythe, and we've been married, it's just about 20 years now. It'll be 20 years.
That's amazing. And Lyria is also on our board. She has really helped us professionalize. She's just such an amazing person. And so really glad to have you with us, Matt. All right. Well, let's get into the discussion. And everybody listening, I have some discussion questions that I pulled from kind of a questionnaire I put out earlier this week on Facebook. But after I get through my questions, we're going to open it up for a live Q&A. So at any time, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. I'll scroll back through after the interview portion and pull your questions. Please go ahead and use question marks because it's a lot easier for my eyes to scroll back through and catch the question marks versus if you forget to leave them in there, I might miss your question. So at any time, drop your questions and let's get started. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask the questions and see who wants to chime in. Everybody, you can feel free to chime in. But as we get into the questions, if there's one that you want to pass on or you feel like somebody already gave a great answer, that's all right too. So what did it feel like when you first heard that your spouse had experienced abuse in the past, and what kind of went through your mind?
I can start. I was aware of some of the abuse that had happened when Lyria was younger, when we were dating. But it was kind of presented to me as something like, this is something in my past. It's something that happened. And I've gone to therapy and I'm better now. And it was like, oh, okay, because I was 19 and stupid. I believe that, and that things like this end. So that was kind of our first experience, and there were signs that, again, I didn't pick up on very well, that this was not, in fact, something that had been completely dealt with. We dated, we got married. 13 years later, I walked into our bedroom and she was collapsed on the floor weeping, kind of out of nowhere. And I said, what's wrong? I thought I had to take her to the emergency department. I had no idea what was happening. And all of the abuse that she had repressed throughout her childhood and her teenage years, younger years, early 20s, had just broken open right there on the floor. And that was like getting hit by a truck. Is probably a pretty apt description. And I'm the personality type where I like to, what I want to do in that moment is retreat to a library and just read every single thing on the subject before I actually have to deal with it. But that's obviously not what you can do in that moment. So I muddled my way through it as best as I could. But no, it was like it was getting hit by a truck, and maybe even worse than that, watching someone you love get hit by a truck.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of people can relate with that. Thank you, Matt. Linda, do you have any thoughts to share?
I do. When it was going on with David and I were actually friends in high school. And of course, nobody knew. And then shortly after the abuse stopped, David and I started dating. Again, I didn't have any clue. So then let's see, we graduated high school, and 25 years later, David and I are reconnected. And he had just started posting stuff on a blog about his abuse, and trying to come to terms and help himself and help others as well through all this. So, and we were not really dating then, so we started dating. And so with that, it brought out also me being able to talk about my abuse, which I had never done with anybody. And so that in turn has helped me. So it's really just, I can't say an amazing journey, but it's in the sense that we have each other to talk about it and talk through it. And it's just so that has really just been such a blessing for both of us that so I don't know if saying we understand each other, we can relate. How about that? With some of what has gone on. But yeah, it has not been an easy road, but we have definitely been together through it. And so, and Ashley, everything that you do, of course, through all this has helped us tremendously. So thank you.
Wow. I appreciate you saying that. And also just, I'm hearing how him speaking about his trauma allowed you to speak about yours and how you're really in this together. And I imagine that that is true for many couples. And so thank you for sharing that, Linda.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jeff, do you have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, Maureen and I actually had an interesting situation because before we realized we had romantic feelings toward each other, we were really, really good friends for 2 years. And we met while we were in college. And Maureen had already done a number of years of not only therapy, but research into her abuse and her abuse dynamics. So she shared with me what had happened and what she researched prior to us even begin to date. And it was, I am of the variety of everyone else. I was completely clueless in that regard. Also, how frequent and how pervasive abuse is, despite the fact that I came from my own sort of inner city traumatic having background, but it wasn't focused in this particular area. And when you grow up in the inner city, you tend to think that everything outside of there is, you know, roses and beauty and sun, and it you know, it hit me, and you begin to have any number of questions. Not only do you have ambivalence with the world, but you have ambivalence with God, and how does He function in all this? And then, you know, she's my best friend at the time, and you ask the question, who would even conceive of attempting to do something like this to her or anyone else or any other human on earth? And those questions just continue to be in my mind as we got to know each other more. And one of the things Maureen is great at is we're sort of both of the Matt variety, where we do, the minute a question comes up, we're researching it, and we're looking at books, and we're online and we're researching. And she was a great help to me to sort of enter into what happens, how this happens, and what she went through. And we've found, you know, we eventually started dating, and it's been amazing to have someone to come alongside you. I know we're talking about spouse support, but someone to come alongside you and be very committed to changing this in the world.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Thank you for that. And there are so many different types of trauma, and it is, I think, sometimes surprising to us the different types of trauma other people have experienced if we've experienced just kind of one kind. And thank you for illuminating that. Will, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, if you would, just so you can keep me on track, would you reread that question for me?
Yeah. So just what did it feel like when you first heard your spouse had experienced abuse, and what went through your mind?
Let me think. So I think maybe the best way to answer this question is, you know, when we were, I guess, kind of dating, and whether we were dating or actually engaged, you know, we had sort of talked generally about each other's baggage. And I was assuring you that I had much, much more baggage because I was older. And but that was just kind of what it was referred to, right? Like we didn't get into any specifics or details, and it was just this vague thing called baggage, right? And so, for us, I would say, it really became noticeable when we were, trying to be intimate. And as a result of that, it had just brought up a lot of, thoughts, feelings, memories, for you. And, so that was, I guess, the first introduction, of it to me. And then kind of, being there with you when you were having a panic attack. I have never seen anything like that before, ever. And so when that was going on, what I was just trying to do is just be present, to hold you, to basically, in a nonverbal way, make you feel safe, as safe as I could. I didn't try to, start talking and sharing things that I probably knew absolutely nothing about. And so it was just in that precise moment of, again, you having that panic attack, that, that was, I guess, that's when I knew this was real. Like this was like a substantial thing. And so once we sort of navigated that moment, then of course we had, additional conversations just to try to, talk about it, process it, those, types of things. And we've had, so many of those conversations, and back to maybe something that Matt said, at the very beginning, like, this isn't a conversation, a one and done thing. Like you don't go to therapy and all of a sudden everything is magically cured. Like that's just not the way this works. And so, so just being, I guess, aware of that, and just, I don't know, just being present, expressing love, not trying to fix, but to just sort of help in whatever way the moment is presenting itself.
Yeah, thank you for that. And from personal experience that was really very helpful and supportive. And for the record, it surprised me too that time I had that panic attack. Was not expecting it. Okay, so we've kind of talked about the first disclosure, the first time you really understood that your spouse had experienced abuse, and a lot of you kind of shared how you initially responded. But I'm wondering, I think we have to be really gentle with ourselves because nobody's really prepared for this. Nobody asks to be abused, and nobody asks to, be in a situation where there's a world where abuse happens, and then we have to all of a sudden know what to do. So with compassion for yourselves and how you responded, what would you say that maybe you're glad you did, or that maybe you wish you could have gone back and done differently with the knowledge you have now? Again, with compassion for yourself, that you did the best you could with the information you had, but was there anything that you might change? And not everybody has to answer, but if anybody has like a thought to pop in for that.
Yeah, getting into therapy as quickly as possible with a trauma-based specialist was absolutely the best thing that we did. I knew we couldn't learn fast enough to walk through this with grace, and the situation required precision. Right? You don't want to do this poorly. You don't want to walk the person you love through a minefield without knowing how to detect the mines. So you have to find someone that does, and sit down and shut up and listen, and figure out how you're going to traverse this. So that was number one. Number two, I don't know product placement here, but we found you, Ashley, and we found Will, and that was huge. Finding the Courage Conference for us, meeting other people that had gone through this before and were in different phases of their journey. Some of them quite a bit ahead of us, some of them a little bit fresher to the situation than we were. It was incredibly beneficial to us. So I'd say those are things we did well, and that I did well. As far as the things that I did poorly, that's a hard question. I mean, everything else maybe. Not finding those things fast enough, not seeking them out fast enough. It's a fog that you enter into, and you don't know what's ahead of you, and oftentimes it's so dramatic and traumatic you don't even know what's behind you anymore, because what was real and what wasn't real, what right? Yes. So I think we did a lot well, but everything can always be done better.
Sure. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, I had a very sort of, I don't know if it was maybe it was such thing as a bad blessing. When shortly after Maureen and I met and became friends and started dating, I developed an anxiety disorder and started having panic attacks and needed to be medicated for anxiety. And that actually ended up being a good thing in our relationship, because it helped me to understand what it is to have a panic attack, which, as someone noted, is terrible, and what it is to deal with anxiety and what it is to deal with triggers. And how do you want people to respond to you in that situation, and that you should apply that own thinking to how you respond to others that are triggered and have anxiety. If I were to list, probably one of the bad things is, of course, as Matt said, it's sort of navigating a minefield. I had to come to terms with the fact that in my introvertedness, which I am, I can close off, right? And I can become very internal. And as a result, that plays a danger when your partner is sharing or your spouse is sharing something that is very deep and can cause great feelings of shame. And if you're not in a place where you can speak and you internalize, that feels like a rejection to the individual. So one needs to be very careful. I think Linda mentioned it, that when you're having these very deep, painful conversations and you're sort of opening yourself up, that you are present and that you are, and Will mentioned this as well, that you're making eye contact and that you're even maybe touching the person if they want to be touched, to, let them know that you're there and ground them. And those things are a learning process.
That makes so much sense. And that kind of leads us into our next question. And I'm wondering, maybe Will and Linda would have some insight here, but how do you learn about the triggers your spouse has and kind of put a plan together to be able to respond when it happens? I know for me as a survivor, I don't always know when the triggers are coming, and I'm just as surprised as Will sometimes that I'm triggered by something. And so, how have you, Linda, maybe navigated learning about the other's triggers and coming up with a plan to address them?
It's it can be a nightmare that David's having. It could be a nightmare that I'm having, right? And again, those are going to come out of nowhere. The triggers could be touch because of the type of day you've had or that you didn't have. And again, it's really sitting back and first you just encouraging and being with your spouse, being with each other, and it's like, okay, what do you think happened? Why do you think? It's like, and sometimes we don't have those answers of really why that trigger came about. And that's okay. We have found, and that's okay. It's okay not to be okay at that moment. So what we do for each other is so important. Whether we're hugging each other and we're just praying for each other, prayer for us, praying out loud for each other and with each other is such a major part for David and I. That's where it has helped us. And again, the triggers can be a smell for him. It really just is. So it's, again, talking about it. Communication is so vital, and being open just to, again, listening and knowing I don't have the answers. And it's okay not to be okay, but just knowing that someone is going to be there to be with us through our hard times.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
Will, do you have any thoughts?
Yes. Read that question again one more time. I'm
sure.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So how do you learn about the other person's triggers and kind of come up with a way to respond with the person when it happens?
Something Linda just said is, communication. And I think that is one of the greatest things that I think you and I have in our relationship is just open, even just raw, open communication. And something I know you've mentioned to me, Ashley, as time has gone on is, like, you've been able to trust me, more and more and more as I've proven myself trustworthy in the relationship. And so having a high level of trust with your spouse or with another person, like that is, I think, paramount for there to be able to have the open conversation. And then kind of once those things are in place, the way that I try to approach, especially when I think that you're being triggered or I just have some inclination, is I'm just aware. Like I'm always just kind of aware. If something looks or feels just a little bit different, like I'm just aware. And I think Matt might have used the word grace. I sort of give grace in that moment, I guess. I am not quick to speak. I am just kind of observing and just kind of taking it in and just trying to understand what's actually going on here. And then just depending on exactly what that thing is, I might make, one of 1,000 different, next step decisions. But I think, proving yourself trustworthy is paramount. Next, have an open communication. And then third would be to just be aware, be watching. And when something isn't quite right, or if something looks out of character, just understand that, what, there may be some trigger that could be coming from any one of 1,000 different places. And so just being aware and, again, just patient. And, when the time comes, to again talk about it, so you can again learn and process and sort of figure out. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's just kind of reminding me there was a time, I wasn't experiencing extreme triggers as often, but there was one time I was really triggered about something that happened. And I think in the moment I told you something to the effect of like, I'm not being triggered right now. This is really the end of the world. And Will's just like, all right, I'll give you a hug. And he didn't say like, no, you are being triggered, because that would have been worse. But then like the next day I was like, you know what? That probably wasn't the end of the world. I probably was being triggered. And so I think a lot of it is, like you said, being aware and kind of making your own actions and behaviors, knowing that a trigger could be taking place, but also giving space and allowing maybe the conversation to happen after the moment of fight or flight is over. And yeah.
And I think, kind of, maybe this is appropriate, maybe it's not, but, in our experiences, there hasn't been something where, I don't know how the best way to put this. We haven't experienced this, but if there was an opportunity, that's not even the right word. Like if something was going on that I thought you could harm yourself, then my actions might be a little bit different than they would be if it is a simply safe. And again, just not the right wording, but if you were to harm yourself, or if I thought you were going to harm yourself, that might look a little bit differently on what I would say and what I might do, versus just allowing you time to, again, just download, process, and those things. So I think that was just kind of important maybe to mention.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because we do have to be aware of safety, and that's a really good point. I'm wondering if anybody else has any comments on triggers before we move to the next question.
Just that it's so individualized that it's really difficult to answer the question kind of in a broad general way. Is just listen to your spouse and have those conversations in calm moments, not when they're yelling at you that it's not a panic attack or you're not being triggered, as Will did in that moment. That's not the moment to disagree. that's the moment to just kind of go, okay.
Yeah, I think Matt earlier said just yeah. I think Matt said earlier just listen and shut up, and that was pretty par for the course.
Yeah, and kind of on those lines, do you have any tips, anyone on the panel, for like not taking your spouse's triggers personally? Because sometimes they can be very outward facing, and it can even be, I can't believe you said that, or, whatever, when you had good intentions and didn't do anything quote unquote wrong, but you feel like it's being taken, directed at you. Any tips for like not taking it personally?
Just keep in the front of your brain at all times that it's not about you. I think that was the most important phrase that I learned in our therapy together, in my therapy sessions, is that when your spouse is triggered and they're throwing every metaphorical dagger at you that they have. If they're throwing real daggers, you need to do something different. But if they're throwing insults and barbs, it's not you that they're throwing them at. They're probably throwing them at the ghosts of their past that they can't get to in that moment. So I guess a spoiler alert if anyone's out there that hasn't seen any of the Star Wars movies. But there's one scene in one of them where the bad guys are just throwing everything they've got at Luke Skywalker, all the lasers, everything, and the dust clears and he's still just standing there. And then it turns out that it was a hologram of him the whole time, and everything just passed right through him. And like when I've entered into those moments, I've actually brought that vision to mind of just let them pass through you, because they're not directed at you. Even if she's saying your name, I guess I should qualify that. Make sure it's not actually about you first. Maybe it is about you. But 90% of the time, these things won't have anything to do with you. These things happened years ago, and the enemy is out of reach, and you just happen to be in the line of fire. So just let it pass through you. And when it's over, and when it's quiet, and when you're in a gentle space, then approach it. But wait for that. Wait for the quiet.
That's really good. And I would also just say, as adult survivors, I do think that we have a responsibility as well. Hopefully we ideally have a supportive spouse, supportive partner, or friend. And in those moments where we're in our fight, flight, or freeze, we may not always know exactly why we're acting and responding. We should have grace for ourselves in our panic moments. But I do kind of want to say, just on behalf of the supportive spouses, like, if we as survivors, after we kind of have that trauma wave pass, it can be really useful to go back and say, hey, I realized I said those things. They weren't about you. It was about my trauma. And I just want you to know that that's where it was coming from. And, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. Like, I do think that we need to also be kind to our quote unquote caregivers in these moments, because we can't always know how we're going to respond in our trauma. But as adults, I do think we need to take some agency and come back and say, hey, after I process this, it really wasn't about you. And I don't want you to think it was. And those can be where really good conversations start, and how healing can happen between a couple. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on that one before we move on?
I think for me, the way I described it, I want to echo some of the stuff that Matt said, because I think what he said was right on. I think part of it is, I told Maureen jokingly this afternoon when I was talking to her about today's event and being a panelist, and I said, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", about 340. I said, but I'm not the center of the universe, right? The planets don't go around me, and everything is not about me. And I need to remember, and she reminded me that we've both shared raising teenagers. And when teenagers are teenagers, which they're a special species of human, they can come home sometimes and you'll say, how was your day? And you get you get screamed at, or you get, they tell you something off-putting because it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with their day or what they experienced while they were in school. And in that sense, you need to, as much as your heat may rise and your ire may rise and you want to come back, you need to, as Matt said, remember that this is about them, that you're not, by the way, I love the Star Wars reference, that much like Skywalker, he's not there, right? And this is where what we've been talking about comes into play, to just be there and listen and understand that as human beings in general, if we're not self-aware, we have a tendency to open up and shoot at people about things that happened elsewhere or people that we were affected by earlier in the day. And because we're capable of that, again, I think for me, it's a very simple, how it's sort of like the golden rule. How would I expect someone to treat me in this situation with grace, with love, so that I should be doing that and doing that forward to the person who needs it?
Yeah. That's really good. How do you handle anger and resentment towards the person that caused the trauma for your loved one?
With lots of communication with David. Letting him talk to me how he's feeling first and foremost. Because of my love and compassion for who I think is the most amazing man on this earth, of course. I am so still mad and angry at what has happened to him in his life, but yet then so without David and all that he has done in his life since to make the world a better place, he has shown me how to handle it with a lot of grace. And not lashing out. And it's our way of lashing out is to help others. But with that too, there's still times that both of us have our moments. And for me, towards my abuser, just a lot of angst and rage, and I will say hate. It's has been there. It's, I think too, when David comes home from teaching at a church, or when we are together and we're doing things, it's raw. And so we definitely allow each other our quiet time, and it's okay to be quiet, to soak it in, and then when the right time is to talk about it, we do, or we don't. It doesn't have to be. It's with David and I, we know we're always getting to know each other every day, but we know each other well enough that, okay, we don't really need to talk right now, and that's okay. But there are, and it's okay to feel the way you feel, and it's okay, again, not to be okay sometimes.
So true. So true. Anyone else on dealing with resentment and anger towards the person that harmed your special person?
I mean, I'm probably maybe different than a lot of people. And Ashley can probably attest to that. So I don't know, just, just the way that I am, like as a person, like I just recognize that they're just evil, just shit humans in this world. And I just understand that, and I acknowledge that. But for me, I try not to allow that to steal my time, my thoughts, my energies. Instead, I do my best to, try to direct those thoughts, feelings, time, just all the things toward, Ashley, and just helping her, kind of process things. And so that's probably, I guess, my best answer, to that type of a thing.
That makes sense. Everybody processes differently. Yeah.
And I think that's even just one of the important things, just as we're answering all these questions, like there's so many ways to approach a certain thing. Like oftentimes there's not just one right way. And so you just have to use context clues and just understand the individual and, several other things in order to have a correct response.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody else is going to jump in. I'm not sure who it was.
Yeah, that was me. Early on, it was actually quite difficult. I wanted to, I had these sort of interesting fantasies of, meeting the person or people on a dark corner. And I needed to learn that, again, this wasn't about me and what I could do. It was about me remembering, and again, I'll echo what Will said, remembering that the most important people are the people who have survived this, and that I need to be there for them and give them my time and love them and help them, show them that I'm a trustworthy person. and that they continue being in this world and being special, and not feel like this is going to keep them down or break them apart forever, or that they have people that when they're broken down, as Linda said, will just sit there and listen or not talk, or just understand that the most important people are the people you have in your life that have survived these things, and just being present.
It's really good. So we're winding down with the questions that I have. I have 2 more, and then we're going to open it up to the discussion. And then I have a few more that I may throw in because these didn't exactly fit the flow, but I think they're valuable. But one of the questions I want to ask is, what are some tips that you have found to create a safe space emotionally, physically, romantically in your marriage? What are some tips that maybe you found have worked well for you? And I don't know, Matt, if you want to start us out, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So this is, I hope, obviously, different for wherever you are in your journey. Hopefully, as things progress, as you go through therapy with your spouse, then you'll be more and more comfortable in those areas, and those areas will expand and grow over time. But initially, it can be very, very complicated to navigate those areas. I know that right after that, I told you, finding Lyria on the floor of the bedroom, standing there, you don't know, would it be good to put a hand on her to help calm her down, or will that trigger her further and send her deeper into this spiral? So one of the first things I can recommend that I had to really do a deep dive into is to examine yourself, okay, as spousal support, as a friend. Examine yourself. What do these areas mean to you? Lyria, one of her things was that she never felt like she was allowed to say no. Okay. So we were married for 13 years before I found her on the floor of the bedroom for this time. And so you can imagine that for 13 years, she never felt like she was allowed to say no. And I didn't know that she didn't feel like she was allowed to say no. So in my mind, physical touch, intimacy, sex, all of those things had equated to her telling me that she loves me. And now all of that, at least for a period of time, was off the table. So I had to recognize that that's not actually what that was at any given moment. That was never her telling me that she loved. Maybe it was sometimes, but that shouldn't be how she's telling me that she loves me all the time. So I had to examine my own psyche pretty deeply and figure out, why is this important to me? Where am I? And I had to reprogram myself in one way or another to, I want to let her know that I love her by giving her a kiss, but that's not going to let her know that I love her. That's going to let her know in that early moment that I don't respect her boundaries and I'm just going to take what I want. And then how am I different than the people that abused her if that's the path that I choose? So I had to reprogram my brain to say not doing those things is how I'm most going to show her that I love her right now. And that's how she's going to feel safe. And that's how she's going to feel secure. And if I do this with some aptitude, And if I do this with some grace, then hopefully this may be a short period of time, and there may be some healing that occurs that allows us to get back to some semblance of previous intimacy where she trusts me in those areas again. But to try to kind of like force the issue would be a nightmare, an absolute nightmare for the person. And so, like I said, I had to reprogram my brain to say, okay, not doing this right now, not doing all of the things that I've ever done, to show her that I love her. I have to not do those and do different things. And so for a long period of time, probably maybe, I'd say 6 months. I'd say there was probably 6 months after that moment with her on the floor, that I did not initiate. It was an agreement that we had communicated. I will not initiate any physical touch. Any physical touch over that period of time had to be initiated by her, because the nuances of the new relationship that we were in were too complex to navigate without hurting her. So it very much became, you tell me what you want me to do, and I will do that thing as we progress towards healing, right? Because if you're not progressing towards healing, that's not a healthy relationship either.
Right.
To just have one person dictating to another what they want, when they want it, and the other person becomes a non-person. In my mind, it was, I have a willingness to be a non-person for an undesignated amount of time, but there is a time limit on it. And as long as we are doing things that will help us heal and help you heal, then I'm okay being that non-person for a period of time. It's not a long-term solution, but I think it's a very good short-term solution.
That's really helpful. And I think that is going to resonate with a lot of people here. And like you said, there's always the goal of continuing to grow and heal. And the ideal is that sex, intimacy, even just, little touches, holding hands, that is something that is like a mutually enjoyable, mutually desired thing, and taking time until that is the case. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I'm just going to repeat the question one more time and see if anybody else has any thoughts on this. And it's just, do you have any tips for making your marriage a safe place emotionally, physically, and romantically?
I would just briefly, for two things, I think two things come to mind with the question. One is maybe more practical. So creating literally a safe place for someone to be, and the things they need in that particular place. So, for Maureen, she jokes with me sometime about this, but I'll say at some points, if we're talking about something, I'll say, well, maybe you need a nap. We can put you down for a nap for a little while. You've had a stressful day. This is putting a lot of weight on you. She loves tea. Maybe I'll go make you some tea. You have a place where you could be away from sort of the noise of the world and the pressure of the things that are happening, to just recenter yourself and just get away from it. The other thing is, which is, I think a learning process as well, is, with Maureen and other friends that I have come to understand have also suffered abuse, and our survivors is learning and watching for bodily language, bodily cues that indicate, and I think they're different for everybody, right? So Maureen and I have been together long enough for me to see that there are certain things that she will do, movements, facial expressions, these kinds of things that are indicative that she is not okay, right? And if I weren't paying attention to that, I would just sort of blow by them and start, completely knock that down. And I think creating a safe place, even romantically, during times of intimacy, is understanding and listening to those bodily cues, right? Because you're not always going to get spoken word about this is uncomfortable, I don't want to do this. But body language and cues can often help you to just stop and address to see if everything is okay.
That's good. Yeah. A lot of our communication, maybe most of it, is nonverbal, and being aware of that. Linda and Will, this is sort of our last question before we jump into the Q&A. What would you suggest to other spouses to make sure that they are taking care of themselves too? Because a lot of this conversation has been focused on taking care of the person who's experienced trauma, and that's important. But I think also, as the supportive spouse, there needs to be a self-care portion. And Linda, I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Oh gosh, yes. I know everybody's different in what they like and what they think, what they need. David, his kind of outing is, he loves music. So, turning the music up and, dancing around, singing, and anything like that. But as well as for me, again, we both will, we love our time with the Lord, our quiet time, our prayer. That is huge for us, that we have that, wherever you are, spiritually, mentally, that quiet time is great. For us, we live by the beach, so we can go walk on the beach. We can go just walk around a pond, and just even go sit by the pool and just enjoy doing those things. But it's just really acknowledging, okay, hey, I need that time. And it's not, my time is not always going to be that time with David. It's going to be sometimes just by myself, and likewise him. But it's me being okay that he doesn't always have to have me with him to be comforted. And that is okay, because again, it's not always about talking, communication. Like you said, it's nonverbal, but just again, getting lost in a good TV show sometimes even can help. So it just depends on, again, the nonverbal cues, but we communication with knowing, hey, I just need some time.
That's really good. It's really good.
Yeah.
Will, any thoughts?
Read that question one more time.
Sure. Yeah. So that's
that
fine.
guy.
It's fine. What would you suggest to other spouses to ensure that they're taking care of themselves too?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, just like, with us, I mean, we are absolutely we are individuals, but yet we also have like, my identity isn't just you, right? Like, I mean, we have our own things that we love and that we do, and all of that. And so I don't know, like I'm having a little difficulty maybe answering the question, but I think for, I guess, me and for us in our relationship, there are absolutely things that, I just do that are just mine. And you don't have any problem with that. and likewise, I mean, I like let you do the things that you want to do, and I certainly don't have a problem with that either. And so I think maybe just having something that is just your own, like whatever it is, doesn't have to be, big and extravagant, but just something that's your own. One example, like for me, is, I'm a hunter, and I get together with my family and go hunting. And even if we're not, and the whole thing about hunting is not trying to, get an animal, but it's just the time away, the camaraderie that you have with others, being out in nature, having quietness, being able to think. Like that's what that is for me. And so just having some time and some space for something like that, in your life, is, I don't know, that's one, of my outlets.
That's really good. And I think sometimes a codependency can develop in relationships where trauma exists. And I think it's important, like you said, to define your individualism and to have shared things, but also to have things that are separate and create your own separate identities. It's really good. All right. So hopefully everybody has some time to stay on because these have been so good. I don't want to cut off answers, but are you all good to hang on for the Q&As here? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So probably what we'll do for this is I'll just have one person answer the question unless you feel like you have something burning to say and the other person didn't cover it. So I'll just kind of let you all choose which one you feel pulled towards. This first one is, I was married for 25 years before I told my husband. He had a difficult time forgiving himself for not picking up on the signs, the moments of triggers. Did you feel guilty, and how did you overcome that guilt? So sounds like guilt of maybe not realizing something was up.
Yeah, sure. I can absolutely identify with that. I try to be I think of myself as educated and perceptive, and I had been told from her early on in our relationship that there were things that happened. So even beyond the guilt of not picking up on a lot of the cues, there was other guilt associated with it that he may or may not be feeling. Like when I alluded earlier to, Lyria not really understanding that she had the ability to say no in our relationship, or in any relationship really before us. There was a moment of realization during our therapy where I thought, have I been party to raping my wife while we've been married? Because if she didn't want to have sex but didn't know she had the ability to say no and went along with it, is that rape? Mm-hmm. And that was a serious conversation that I had to have with Lyria, and she thankfully reassured me that is not how she viewed those intimate moments at all, and that was very, very beneficial. But there can be a lot of guilt associated with things that the survivor may not even realize that you're wrestling with as a spouse. So again, to, I think, harken back to what everyone has said at some point here, open communication with your spouse who's the survivor, and with your spouse who isn't, or if you're both survivors. Certainly, when these things come up, neither one of you are mind readers. Neither one of you know what the other person is thinking. So when you're thinking that, don't let it fester in your soul and metastasize to things it has no business attaching to. You find those quiet moments, and you need to discuss that as soon as they come up, before they have a chance to fester and grow. Yeah, these things, they have a tendency to spin out of control if they stay in your brain.
Mm.
But by verbalizing them and getting more immediate feedback from your loved one will save you. There'll be difficult conversations, but you have to choose your sacrifice. Are you going to be uncomfortable in that moment, or are you going to live in that disgust for yourself, possibly unnecessarily? So you choose which sacrifice you're going to make, and earlier the better, and tell the truth.
Thank you for being so raw and vulnerable with that. I'm sure a lot of spouses of survivors can really, especially as we're getting educated, together, as to what is consent, what is all these things, all those questions go through your mind. So thank you for that. I've got another question here. It says, how are your extended families in terms of supporting you as you were supporting your partners? A survivor of cult family upbringing, for example, marrying into a family without that background must have unique challenges. And I don't know, Will, if that's directed at you, since your family wasn't in a cult and mine was.
Well, I would say I'll try to answer this specifically for, I guess, mine and Ashley's families, and then also kind of address it in broader terms, which are kind of probably one and the same. You're going to have people who are supportive, and you're going to have people who are absolutely not. And it really is eye-opening, and I would say at times very disappointing. The responses that you get from people who you just expect better of. Mm-hmm. And so I know that has certainly been our experience. And it's one of those things where I think we all sort of have that hope that, well, you can just tell your families anything. Like, they're going to love you unconditionally. They're going to be supportive. They're going to this, they're going to that. And unfortunately, all too often, that's just not the case. And so I would say, man, it's just been a disappointing experience, just to be honest with you. But that has, it's put us in a position to where we had to make choices, to set boundaries. And those do come with some consequences, right? A lot of people don't like to have boundaries set upon them, especially when they're acting a fool. And so I would say in doing that, there has absolutely been sort of pain and some discomfort. But at the same time, I think it's been amazing in just so many ways, where you're no longer subjecting yourself to moments of interaction that are just not positive or helpful or beneficial in any way whatsoever. And so just to make those decisions, like when you see that behavior that is not the way it needs to be, and when it's more than just them being ignorant to the situation, because people who are ignorant and have a willingness to learn and adapt and to meet you where you are, like, that's different. And unfortunately, a lot of what we've seen with different members of our family is, like, they just don't even believe it happened, or they just think, oh, you're just overreacting, or why don't you get over it, or just any of this other just complete just nonsense. Because when they're stuck there, there's nothing that you can do to really change their minds, I don't think. I think they have to be open. They have to learn. They have a lot of work to do before they can actually come to the relationship. And I would say that, and again, don't mean to speak for Ashley, but in some circumstances, I would say, we could open the doors to some family members, potentially. But it just depends on like so many different things. And so, I hope that I've answered that question. But just one thing, just kind of a broader thing is kind of back to what I'd said kind of initially. I think a lot of us feel and would hope that our families are going to be supportive, and that just might not be the case. And I know that's been because, Ashley and I, we've interacted with, goodness gracious, hundreds, if not thousands of different people who have had similar experiences, and it's just been the same. Like, we're just so disappointed all too often in the way that our families respond. And so just, be aware of that.
It's really good. And I think it's a time to think about who you're going to create as your chosen family. And also a time of, I know Will always has my back no matter what, no matter who, and, vice versa. And I think that's really important. Another question. It says, I married a widower with kids, and the kids don't want to learn about my abusive past to help me. As a retired psychologist, I know they are narcissists. So how do Dan and I find a balance in having a relationship with his kids while protecting my own emotional safety?
I mean, for that, I've shared some of what I guess my perspective on that is, but certainly I would love to hear someone else kind of share their kind of perspective on that.
When David and I started dating and so I have 2 kids from a previous marriage, and they were then older teenage, like 18 and 20. And not that my kids have never been supportive, but they just didn't understand. And so as the years have gone by, and them getting older, and now my youngest son having actually a family of his own, a wife and son, and he's very much wanting to even get his church involved in learning the safeguarding of what David does and what he teaches. A lot of it takes time. It's my kids had to get to really know David, know his heart, know first and foremost that he really is in love with me, and for that, then they can start really listening to him and what he has gone through in his life, and that, well, what he does for his work makes such a monumental difference in churches, and in not just churches, but in everyone's daily life to help protect the vulnerable. And so I guess I'm saying time and the willingness to let people know you just truly just who you are as a person, with and without that abuse. I mean, that abuse is going to be there, but those kids will hopefully eventually say, I'm getting older, I'm learning, and a lot of times, and I don't know how old the kids are, but regardless, if they haven't been around it, they don't know how to respond. Mm. And the subject is not one for the weary. And a lot of people want to run and just act like it has never happened. So it's us being right here, what we're doing, teaching and saying, hey, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I just wanted to, unfortunately, the person who asked that question is probably the person most qualified to answer that question as a psychologist. Certainly more qualified than maybe any of us are. However, I'll take a crack at it. And what I would say is, if the children, again, we don't know what age, are truly narcissists, then that's not the person you trust with your story, and that's not the person that you ask for help with your story. And you have to be very careful with yourself as a survivor who you're going to let enter into that circle of trust. Now you married into this family, and they are present, they are there, but they're not. If they truly are narcissists, they're not who I would trust with my story. And I wouldn't expect to receive any help from them. It's, pearls before swine.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah.
And I think one other just thing to kind of add to that is, again, this kind of goes back to the whole trust and open communication with your spouse and kind of navigating that together because, if these aren't your kids, well, I mean, there has to be some communication there. And just how you would navigate that situation, it's just important to, have the support of your spouse. But it's a lot of nuance, of course, but I would certainly say, engage, your spouse and just make sure you're on the same page, with that.
Yeah. All good advice. Thank you. Is there any advice you can offer to people who think that it's okay to trip people's triggers on purpose?
Run away. Run away. If it's on social media, turn it off. If they're standing in front of you, run away. Yeah.
It's advice to people who would do that?
Yeah, I guess so. So, I mean, I guess take it as you wish if it's advice to somebody who's experiencing that. But the way the question is worded is advice to people who are trying to trip people's triggers. What would you say to them?
Yeah, exactly. Just stop. This is not.
Know that you have a voice.
Yeah.
Know that. Yeah, I would reiterate what Linda said. Know that you have a voice, and your voice can cause harm.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Okay, I'm just going to pull from these last few questions here that were from the thread. If I've missed anybody else's in the live comments, please just go ahead and add your question again. I'm just going to pull from these last 3 questions on my sheet, though. So one is, this is about the dating phase, and that is, how did you handle the dating phase when your survivor partner pulled back and retreated? So anybody who knew about the trauma, I guess, while they were dating.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Linda, go ahead.
No, Jeff, that's fine. Go.
When me, Maureen and I started dating, I was familiar, as I said before, with her history and experience. And I mean, part of the process of dating, right, was use the word, a positive word, enhanced, with understanding this was in her background and that some of her reactions would be a result of triggers she was experiencing and this sort of thing. And this involved pulling back, as you stated in your question. There was one time I remember we were in a restaurant, and I forgot exactly what triggered it, but something happened where, this if anyone knows Maureen's smiley, vibrant person, I tell her that when we first met that she's full of tea and sunshine. She immediately sort of like, even in my mind's eye, I have a memory of like her darkening and shrinking, like this immediate pullback from whatever was happening. And we were just this is actually a little bit before we were dating. Was sort of in that crossover period between realized we had romantic feelings for each other. And the way that I dealt with it without knowing specifics was to encourage her that I was there and that she was safe, like verbally telling her that she was safe, that nothing was going to hurt her, that it was okay for her to be feeling what she was feeling, but to just remind her that she was in a safe space. That regardless of what was happening, whatever had happened had stopped happening, and we were away from that situation. But seeing her pull back, first of all, was scary, right? You see this person that you love that is one way, and then immediately is just not there. I mean, she's there, but she's shrunken. She's and I immediately went to her and said, "It's okay, you know, you're safe. We're okay. Everything around you is okay. You can feel comfortable in that." And I let her sort of be to herself, and eventually she worked her way out of it. But later she had told me that was helpful. And because she told me that was helpful, I realized that as we continued dating and eventually got married, that would need to be my responsibility when we were together and something similar like that happened where she pulled back. That I would, because she verbally told me that was helpful, I now had a tool to be able to use when it happens again, to be able to tell her that she was, you know, as long as we were away from the thing that was happening, that she was safe and that she was okay and that she was free to feel the way she was feeling.
Yeah.
Feedback is good.
Yeah.
Feedback is good. I like that. Oh, good. I'll do that again. I don't like that. Okay. You got it. Won't do that anymore. Feedback is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Linda, were you going to say something? I didn't want to cut you off.
No. So me being the only female, you know, on the panel, and it being my husband being abused, you know, it has happened to me where David has pulled away. And, of course, again, trying not to get into my own feelings about it, right? Because women, we are about our feelings. We just, not that men aren't, but it took a little bit, and I had to realize. And then he said, "Honey, it's not you. It's not you." And he couldn't really even explain it other than it just was not going to happen. Right. And I got over myself, you know, and it's happened, you know, before and more than once, and that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that all the women out there listening to this that has a man that's gone through this, their spouse, you know, again, it's me having to say, yeah, like Jeff, you know, just saying, hey, it's okay. And just being with him in any fashion he needed me to be.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to do. And again, get over myself and my feelings.
That's so good. Thank you. Have you found a path back from caregiver to intimate partner? And if so, what resources helped you most? And anybody can answer this, but I know, Matt, you kind of talked about that period of time where there was a pause. And so I'm wondering if you want to follow up with this question with like what kind of helped bring things back together.
Yeah. No, I would. Yeah, absolutely. I don't view myself as a caregiver anymore. You know, we are about 7 years past that moment on the bedroom floor, as we refer to it. And what I would say is, you know, time does not heal all wounds, but time with intentionality can heal a lot. So, I would say yes, absolutely. We found our way back to being intimate partners. I'm not her caregiver any more than she is my caregiver, because that is a piece of the role of spouse, right? To care for each other, and hopefully when one is down, the other one is up and can help you back on your feet. So yeah. Now, as far as what helped us, there are not a lot of there's just not a lot of resources out there that I found, at least. If anyone else knows any, that would be fantastic. There's a lot for survivors. There's not a lot for spouses of survivors that I found. So what therapy. Huge advocate of good therapy, and being around like-minded people, and being around a community of support, like the Courage Conference has always endeavored to create, was fantastic for us. And then the communication back and forth with each other to set a goal, set a target, because if you don't have a target, you can't hit it, right? So you both need to agree that this is something that you want to work back towards first. And then once you have that target, then you can figure out the best way to aim at it and the best way to send a projectile towards it. But if you don't agree on a target first, you can't get there. And then, if you hit that target, then move it back a couple feet and keep going. Because there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's magnificent. And if you travel well through this together, it may not be the same as it was before, but it could be so much better. Because you'll have that deep, it won't just be intimacy. It'll be deep, connected intimacy, which is, I think ultimately the goal. And
yeah, that's really good. So my final question, I'm just going to give you guys a second to think about what your answer might be, is going to be about just any last thoughts that you might have on wisdom or advice you'd want to share for supportive spouses of survivors, either whether it's taking care of themselves or things that they should remember as they are supporting their spouse. But as you're kind of thinking through like your last kind of piece of advice there, one of the questions we received was, where do you find community with other spouses of survivors? And admittedly, like Matt said, that's very hard to find. And so one of the things that we are planning to do as Courage 365 is we're going to be launching more of the Courage Clubs coming in 2023. So we did a beta round of these peer support groups where there was a curriculum that people went through. We're going to be launching more of those, and they're going to be specialized on different communities. So maybe it'll be the Jehovah's Witness community, or people who've left Mormonism, or people who've left cults, those types of things. So there can be a facilitator who's gone through the specific things who can help with those support groups. But one thing we'd like to do is to have a Spouses of Survivors support group as well. So there can be learning and education about trauma and those types of things, but also a way to be connected with other spouses going through similar things. So there can be a camaraderie there. So just kind of giving people a heads up, that's something in the works for 2023 that we're planning on. But I just want to kind of go around, and we'll go ahead and start with you if that's fine. Just any last words of advice, either for spouses themselves, as they're supporting their spouse, or advice for like kind of just that journey with the survivor of trauma.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and again, it has been mentioned a few times, is the trust you have with your spouse is that's just paramount. It really is. And what allows you to have that is the open communication, and kind of the two working in tandem. My goodness, man, that just covers so much. And so that's probably the biggest, thing, that I'd mention. And then, maybe a second part of that is, I think, community is really important. And a lot of times, even though we desire that with our family, um, sometimes it's just not the best place to get it. And I do think that is what we've tried to do with Courage 365, is to provide an opportunity for people to engage in a community, that gets it. And we are a community of survivors. We are a community of spouses. We are a community of people who certainly have empathy and care towards survivors. And like, you just can't get that everywhere, right? Like, you just can't. And so anyway, that's probably, kind of my final thoughts and encouragement. So yeah.
Thank you for that, Will. Linda?
I'll ditto with that, Will, all of it. But also, with communication, you have got to be a good listener and truly just hear each other, what each other is saying. And I get ahead of myself sometimes, and I'm listening, but I don't always hear. And just getting better with that as well. But again, just support for us. It's our support in our small groups that we have at our church. Whether, it's whatever kind of community you may have to do. But so for us, that is what works for us. So, but absolutely, communication, trust, and being such a good listener.
Thank you, Linda. Jeff?
Yeah, I guess I would say, of course, doing a double ditto for the people who came before me. I would add something that I've been adding in a number of conversations. So the stuff we're talking about can be messy and complex, and it's not an overnight or a week fix, right? You're attempting to heal and become better, and you're also trying to, in the midst of that, trying to find joy in your relationship because this is the person that you love. I think one of the things that we forget along the way is, I think one of the things that we do along the way working at this is we can be very judgmental of ourselves. And I think people need to remember that through the process, whatever process it is, if it's therapy, which I encourage, or whatever process people are going through and couples are going through, to remember to be kind to yourself and to be merciful to yourself, for all the hurdles and the ups and the downs that you will go through. I would also say to remember that if you are, time with intentionality, as Matt said, that is a transforming process. And in you, hopefully, and in you helping your loved one, your spouse, to have this transformative experience, there is a reciprocal relationship where it is transformative to you as well, so that you are also becoming a better spouse and a better human being and a person who can truly love this other person, and that person can love you honestly, deeply, and intimately.
Thank you, Jeff. Matt?
It's quite an act to follow, these three. I better come up with something good. Let me just speak, as a man who identifies as a man. Okay. So that's who I'll be talking to right now in this moment. And if it works for other people, then that's good too. When you're going through the pain of this, because it will be painful, um, focus on that intense, crazy, sometimes lustful feeling that you had for them in the very beginning of the relationship. That feeling that made you ask them to spend the rest of their lives with you, and focus on that, and focus on the things you said when you were wooing them, when you were trying to garner their attention and their affection. And if you're anything like me, there's grand gestures in that. There's, I would kill for you. I would die for you. All of these things that we think and we feel because we've watched too many movies, or we had Shakespeare injected into our veins as children. Remember that, and then ask yourself if you'd be willing to be uncomfortable for them. And just sit in that, because no, they're not asking you to kill for them. Hopefully, they're not asking you to die for them. They're asking you to be uncomfortable with them. And I think if you keep that in perspective, it seems manageable, especially in comparison to the promises you made when you were trying to get them to say "I do."
Wow. Thank you all so much. I hope that you all go back and look at the comments, because they've been coming in. They're really, really good. People have really enjoyed this. I appreciate each of you. I appreciate all the supportive spouses out there. It really does make a difference. And Will, Linda, Jeff, Matt, I appreciate your time tonight. And I know that this has made a difference. So thank you. And everybody, thank you also for tuning in. So this has been the 30 Days of Courage. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that if you have missed any of our speakers, that you go and see the featured pinned part at the top of the group where you can go watch those replays. We do have this free resource created by one of our board members, Maureen Garcia. It's called What I Wish I Knew Before I Left. It's a great resource, both a combination of survivor voices giving their wisdom and also the quote-unquote experts. But the book really does feature how survivors are the true experts. This is completely free. You can download this ebook at our website, courage365.org. If you click the resource tab, it's there along with other resources as well. Something else we're very proud of and enjoy offering to you is our daily text messages. So with these text messages, it is kind of a shot in the arm of courage every morning, Monday through Friday. These messages are written by survivors for survivors, just to give you encouragement. And we don't spam you. We don't share your number. You're not getting messages from other people other than courage. And all you have to do to get them is just type the word courage in the message format, and then to the number you're going to send it to is the one on the screen, which is 917-809-7311. We hope you'll take advantage of that. I know people have really loved this. And then if this has been supportive to you, if the 30 Days of Courage has made a difference, if you have used our resources, if you've gone to our events, and if you're at a place where you can help us out, like truly, we survive because of donations, and we're not able to continue offering free things if we don't have the finances to continue offering free things like this. And so if you've been moved at all and you're in a position to do so, we would ask that you please become a monthly donor for Courage 365. It would make a huge difference. You are helping other survivors. I look at it as instead of tithing to a toxic church community, it's really giving back to a community that actually helps survivors. And to do that, all you have to do is go to our website, courage365.org, and click the donate tab on the right-hand corner. And we'd be so grateful. It really does make a difference. We're a small organization and everything counts. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. We're not going anywhere. The 30 Days of Courage is now officially over, but we have so many other things coming up, other resources that will be coming out later this year and in 2023. So please stay active in the group, and sending you all so much love. Live with courage.